Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in a valley surrounded by mountains, there lived a wise old sage. This sage was known far and wide for his unshakable peace and equanimity in the face of all circumstances. Everyone in the village admired him and sought his guidance in times of trouble. One day, he was visited by a young man who was intrigued by his calm and serene nature. The young man came to the sage and asked him, "How do you remain so calm and serene all the time, even when things around you seem to be falling apart?" The sage smiled and replied, "It's simple. I have learned the power of not reacting." The young man looked puzzled. "What do you mean by not reacting?" he asked. The sage replied, "Imagine that you have a bowl of muddy water. If you leave it untouched, the dirt settles at the bottom and the water clears. But if you keep stirring it up, the water remains muddy." He went on to explain, "This is the same with your mind. When you encounter situations that trigger a strong emotional response, your mind becomes like the muddy water. To clear your mind, you must find a way to stop stirring it up. When something happens that would normally trigger a reaction in most people, such as anger, fear, or frustration, I observe it with detachment and remain in a state of calm awareness." The young man was intrigued, asked, "Can you give me an example?" he asked. The sage nodded. "Here's an example. Imagine that someone insults you or says something hurtful. Most people would react immediately with anger or hurt. If you do not react, if you simply observe the situation with detachment, you will see that the insult has no power over you. You can choose to let it go and remain in a state of peace." The young man thought about this for a moment, then asked, "But what about when something truly bad happens, like a loved one dying or losing your home?" The sage replied, "Even in the face of tragedy, you can choose not to react. You can still remain in a state of peace and equanimity. This does not mean that you do not feel sadness or grief, but it means that you do not allow those emotions to control you. You can observe them with detachment and understand that they are temporary and passing." The young man nodded thoughtfully. "I see," he said. "But how do you learn to not react? Isn't it our natural instinct to react to things?" The sage smiled. "It takes practice and discipline," he said. "The key is to observe your thoughts without judgment or reaction. Just as a cloud passing overhead does not affect the sky's nature, let your thoughts come and go without allowing them to disturb your inner peace. You must train your mind to be still and focused so that you can observe and not react. You must cultivate inner peace and equanimity through meditation, mindfulness, and other spiritual practices. Over time, you will find that the power of not reacting becomes second nature, and you will be able to remain calm and centered in all situations." The young man practiced this for months, and over time, he found that he could control his reactions better and remain calm even in most challenging situations. He learned that by observing his thoughts without reacting to them, he could control his emotions and find peace within himself. As the young man continued to learn from the wise old sage, he discovered the many ways in which he had been reacting unconsciously to the world around him. He realized the great power that lies in simply observing his thoughts and emotions, rather than allowing them to control him.